To tell whether this function has a minimum or maximum value, we only need to look at the value of a. Notice that a is 1, which is positive. That tells us that our parabola will open up, and therefore its vertex will be a minimum. So we're looking for a minimum value here. To find it, we need to find the coordinates of our vertex, because the vertex will be on the minimum value. Well, the x-coordinate of our vertex is going to be equal to negative b divided by 2a. Here's our b value. Here's our a value. And notice that it doesn't depend upon c at all. The y value will, but not the a value. We're going to have negative 6 divided by 2 times 1, which gives us negative 3. That is not our minimum value. Our minimum value will be the y value. To find the y value, we substitute negative 3 back into our original equation for x, and we'll have negative 3 squared plus 6 times negative 3 plus 4. This is 9 minus 18 plus 4, which gives us negative 5. So our vertex will be at negative 3, negative 5. Our minimum value is our y coordinate, which is negative 5. And in fact, that helps us determine the range for our function. Since it's a minimum, all our y values will be greater than or equal to negative 5. We can also find min and maximum values by graphing. So we'll next take you to the graphing calculator. And we'll go to the equation editor and put in our equation x squared plus 6x plus 4. Then we'll go to a standard zoom. And here's our parabola. Now we already know that our minimum value is at negative 3, negative 5. We just calculated that. So in fact, if I push the trace button and then type in negative 3, the cursor goes right to that point. But let's pretend that we didn't actually know that in fact, that we weren't just checking it, that we were actually trying to find it. To do that, we press second and the trace button, which brings us to the calc menu. We know this is a minimum because our value for a is positive. So we'll go down to number 3. Looking for a minimum. Now left bound means to move that cursor to the left of the minimum. You can either move it using the little nav keys, the left nav key, this way, or you can type in a number that you know is left of the minimum. For example, negative 4. I tend to do it that way just because it's quicker. Next is to ask for the right bound. And again, we can either move the cursor slowly or type in negative 1, which we know is right of the minimum. Now it wants you to guess in the middle. So I'll just move the cursor a little bit to the left of my right boundary. And your guess doesn't have to be all that close, as you can see. When you press enter, it calculates the minimum. Now notice that this y, meant to say this x value, isn't the negative 3 that we got. In fact, it actually is. When the graphing calculator determines the minimum, it does it by guessing and checking. And so you'll find often that it's not going to give you an exact value like you get with your paper and pencil. Finally, when you take a look at this graph, remember that we said our range was y greater than or equal to negative 5. Well, it's easy to see on this graph that all of our y values are above a y value of negative 5. So there's a lot to be gained by looking at the graph of this function after you spend some time with paper and pencil determining the information.